getting 5-star reviews, don't you know?
Oh, I bet a lot. How many people saw it in an actual movie theater when it came out? Oh, that's quite a few. I'm surprised. That's great.
Wow.
Well, that's nice.
Quid pro quo, yes or no, Jodie Foster? Is that okay way to start?
A good way to start.
Must be, I mean, what is the emotion or the feeling to come here to a room this warm of people 26 years after this film was originally released and get that reception?
Well, you know, this kind of experience, to have a movie that came from such a wonderful book and inspired so many people to do the best work that they'll probably ever do in their whole lives, and then knowing that the film in some ways is timeless and lives on, it's sort of the little pot at the end of the rainbow that you always hope for but that you never get, and then it's actually quite difficult because you get it. I got it. I was, I was 29 years old or something, and I didn't realize it was kind of gonna never happen again. You know, you don't realize how rare it is, but it is rare, and I feel very blessed. So.
What's the film about to you? What do you think the film's about? Because it's interesting hearing people tonight who've seen it again and go, actually, I hadn't realised that it's about this or that, but for you?
Well, it's about a lot of things. I can tell you the reason that I lobbied for it, because I did try hard to get this movie. I was not the first choice. Was because I had, in my whole life, had been playing a lot of victims. So I'd been playing a lot of women that had been acted upon and things had been done to them. And that is a big part of women's history. It would be remiss to only play characters that are presidents or, doctors. I mean, a large part of our history has been about being acted upon. And for me, the reason that it was so important to make this movie was that there was a sort of healing process and almost like a growing up process to finally playing the woman who saves the women. And that woman who is saving the woman sees a reflection of herself in the women that she's trying to save. And when you think about the mythology that a movie like this comes from, so a very classic mythology of, a prince, his country is suffering from an illness, he is sent off into the woods and he meets gnomes and demons along the way, and he goes into this forest of experience. He's given the panacea to, bring back finally, he endures all these terrible things to bring back finally to his people, having learned all these terrible things about himself, this self-reflection, and realizes that once he's cured his people, that he will never be of his people again. And that is an age-old classic myth. But it's never been reserved for women. So for me, that was the most exciting thing, was to say, we're going to take a classic human myth and ask ourselves, why in the hell has this been only reserved for men? And is there no such thing as female agency? And is there a way to have a female character that can participate in this mythology?
You said you fought for this role.
I did.
What did you do to convince Jonathan?
It wasn't a big fight. I mean,
How did you convince him?
I knew that another actress that he was going to hire another actor. Well, first of all, I read the book and then tracked down the book to buy the book, and to try to produce the movie. And I found that it had already been bought by Orion, and that they had already gotten a writer on. And so I knew everybody at Orion. I said, I just would like to tell you that I would really like to make this movie. I just won an Oscar. I thought, okay, I might have a shot at this. And
Loving your skills.
And then the director was Gene Hackman, actor who you guys know. He was not going to play Lecter. I think he was going to play Crawford, but he was going to direct the movie. It was going to be his first film as a director. And he read, the first draft came out, and he read it, and he said, this is too violent. I can't possibly make this movie. He dropped out of the film, and I found this out, and I said, okay, well, he dropped out of the movie, but I'm going to be considered for the next director. And the studio said, well, no, the next director is going to be Jonathan Demme, and he's not interested in you. So I was just devastated. I knew that, So I got on a plane after he had offered the movie to somebody else. I got on the plane. I met with him in New York, and I said, I would just like to be your second choice. And these are the reasons why. And I kind of laid out all these reasons why, and then I left and, didn't think anything about it. And then eventually got a call.
Amazing. That's brilliant. Is it right that Sean Connery at one point was going to play Lecter?
I don't remember Sean Connery. No, but it sounds good for your people, doesn't it? No,
terrible, but I
there were a few other American actors that I think the studio were keen on, of the variety that you might think, whether it was Al Pacino, Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, that kind of thing. And I think both Jonathan and I were very keen on the idea of having a British actor play it, and specifically Anthony Hopkins, because, Lecter is a manipulator. Lecter has this way of using language in order to seduce and entice and to keep people at bay. And we felt that the American style of kind of Stanislavski acting was really the wrong route. I think you needed, instead of it being, why is this serial killer a serial killer? You're not looking for emotional reasons. I think you wanted to see the monster. I think you really wanted to see that almost Shakespearean monster. So that's why we jumped the pond.
The relationship and the chemistry between you and Sir Anthony on screen is unbelievable. It's just incredible. But you never talked during the making of this. And
it was a dumb thing. It was really dumb.
It worked.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't on purpose. We had done a rehearsal in New York City. I'd gotten there early, and I sat down. I got my stuff all ready. I got in there early. And then
so keen.
Nobody else was there. So I went away and took a phone call. And by the time I got back, everybody was sitting down. So I never had a chance to say hello to him. I just sort of waved hello to him. And we did this rehearsal. We read the whole script, and he was petrifying. He was so scary that I couldn't bring myself to talk to him after the rehearsal, so I left. Then he went off and did another movie, and I did the whole first part of Silence of the Lambs without him. He only shot for like 7 days or something, 10 days of shooting, or maybe even less.
Wow.
So I never saw him until halfway through the shoot, and finally he came in, and I didn't get a chance to work with him. They screwed him into that door.
So he was locked in there.
He was locked in there. It took like 15 minutes to get him out. There was a whole process with the Makita drill and everything in order to get him out. So they put him behind the glass, and I was like, hi. And then, because the scenes were so long, the scenes are like 10 pages long, they're quite long, we would do his side one day, and then his stuff was done, they'd unscrew him, and then they'd do my stuff the next day. And much of the dialogue is to camera. If you notice, there's a lot of stuff that's direct to camera, sort of a Hitchcock technique. So some days, I never even saw him, and he never even saw me. I would hear a voice behind the camera, and he would hear a voice behind the camera, but we couldn't see each other. So we would look directly in the lens for a lot of our performances without being able to see the other one. I mean, by the time I got to his 10 days, I realized I'd never spoken to the guy, really. And we finally finished. I was eating a tuna fish sandwich. It was the last day of shooting, and I said, I was a little scared of you. And he said, I was scared of you. And then we had a big hug, and that was the end of that.
That I think, though, is part of why it's so incredible, that performance, and that just the way that you completely get him as well. That's what's so amazing about her as a character.
I guess so. I mean, I think Anthony really is one of the humblest people that I've ever met. But I do agree with him on this one point that he always makes, which is it really was a beautiful script. And it did not take much. In fact, this draft of this screenplay was almost virtually to the word the original first draft. I don't know if you know a lot about making movies in Hollywood, but very often you bring other writers on. There's many drafts. This can go on for years and years and years. This one came out of the typewriter and went directly on screen. And that's a testament, I think, to Thomas Harris's novel, and what a good novel that was, that everybody was so inspired by that novel.
What do you think you connected with Clarice, and why you were so, driven to be part of this and bring her to life?
The reasons that I told you, but I also think that there was something about somebody who had been traumatized by sound, in a way. This idea of having been traumatized by being small, and by not being big enough to help or to care for somebody who, and having been such a failure. That trauma from that is what she brings to her character. And the performance that I had done before that in The Accused was somebody who's really quite brash and vulgar and talks loud, and I there was something I really wanted to explore about the delicacy of somebody who doesn't, who knows that they will never be big enough, and they will never be big enough to accomplish the task that's ahead of them. So they have to engage their most extraordinary talent, which is their heart.
I heard you talk brilliantly about how much you love the camera.
Oh.
And
yeah.
someone asked you about theatre, and you were like, "No, I'm not that keen." And you were like, "I love working with the camera, and I love what you can do with it." And in terms of with this particular film, you talk about how much you had to play to the camera as opposed to with the other actors and stuff. Is it a big difference for you? Is it in terms of how do you obviously get a lot out of that kind of performance?
Well, I started working when I was 3 years old. And I started doing features when I was 6, and the camera's always been a big part of my life. And I think the part that really seduced me as an actor was how it was made. As a young person, I didn't really understand what acting was. I didn't have a lot of respect for it. I thought it was just saying lines that someone else wrote. But I understood things like focus and how to load a magazine, and I loved all of the technical stuff that goes into making something that eventually becomes seamless. So that was the part that really got me interested. And I think that I knew that I wanted to be a director from the time that I was young. And so that was the part that really got me. So I love telling stories by using all of the different, it's not just the acting, but all of the different vocabularies that are at your fingertips, whether it be sound or props or production design, music. Those things coming together to me is really beautiful.